economic assistance, things you guys can do in the NDAA or through the China Select Committee? Thank you.
Let me be very clear. We advocate that that day never comes. And if we've learned anything from Ukraine, there's actions that could have been taken 5 years ago, so Ukraine never had. Deterring that action to take place would have saved thousands of lives. I think today is a part of that. We've always had with the 6 assurances that we could supply weapons to Taiwan, that they could defend themselves, that war would not be created. They have purchased a number of weapons from America. Some have been delayed. I think one of the things that we had talked about, how could we speed that up in the process? I think you have a commitment from both sides here to make sure that happens. How can we build more trade, economics? I think that helps along the way as well. I would hope that as lawmakers, our goal is to make sure those days don't happen. And I think we should learn from what's happened in the past. I would take it, and I want to give a lot of credit to Hakeem Jeffries. When I sat down with him when I first became Speaker, we talked about this Select Committee. And the goal of this Select Committee is to speak with one voice. And I have been very impressed with the chairman and the ranking member of how they carried about themselves. And this isn't the only meeting that a number of them are going to do. They're going to go throughout California, meeting in others. And part of the Select Committee is finding places in America so we're not dependent on other countries, be it critical minerals, be it medical. Making America stronger makes the world safer. And that's the unique goal that all of us have, and that's what we're working towards. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, you've talked at great length about the importance of the unity of this delegation and the bipartisanship, the bipartisan nature of it. But today, as you're meeting here with the Taiwanese President, Emmanuel Macron, the French President, is in Beijing meeting with Chinese leaders. What do those conflicting messages mean for the strength of this message and for your approach to China? And then, if you can comment on yesterday's indictments, that would be great, too.
Well, first of all, I don't think what Macron's doing is conflicting here. From the same point that I tell China, they cannot tell me who I can meet with. For the same argument that I said, this meeting will foster greater freedoms, right? It's communication. So I think it's great that Macron is meeting in China. I hope he delivers a message not to fund Russia's war in Ukraine. I hope he delivers a message that democracy makes the world safer and stronger. I hope he delivers a message that Americans meeting with President Tsai is positive for the same aspect that he is meeting with President Xi. I've been to China 3 times. I think greater communications between nations are positive. I think trying to show military actions is not. Communications are stronger. And the answer to your second question is no. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Susanna Lethe with the Washington Free Beacon. You mentioned that one of the topics you discussed was boosting arms sales to Taiwan. What's your plan to do so, considering the White House is signaling reluctance to upset Beijing? And then secondly, are you at all concerned that during Taiwan's next presidential election, a more Beijing-friendly candidate could win?
Look, one thing I believe in democracy, and let them have a say in the process and decide who wants to lead them and have an open and honest and fair debate without others advocating inside. I don't get the same approach from this administration. I think this administration, and my communications with them too, see the importance of speeding up the weapon delivery system. So I'm not feeling the same differences based upon your question. And I do believe in the motto of President Reagan, peace through strength. And I think deterring, if I just sit back and I look at what transpired in Ukraine, I remember coming back from Ukraine in 2015 and advocating to sell them javelins. Javelins, a defensive weapon to stop the tanks from coming in. And maybe had that action been taken or others, Russia would not have felt that that was a mode for them to go through and thousands of lives would have been saved. And I think this is no different than what the 6 assurances have said from Reagan, that we would supply Taiwan with weapons. And we didn't set a timeline to the one China. So it's carrying out the exact same policy we have had for decades. And I believe in that motion if we're able to do it. They've already made the cells. It's the delivery of the system. And I think for that same action, if people would have taken that action in Ukraine, the world would be safer. And I think that's an action that we should take. And I believe, I'm not going to put words in anybody's mouth, but with our discussions, I believe that is a bipartisan position. And I would think, I'm not going to speak for the administration, but from my conversations with the administration, that's the same feeling I've had back from them as well. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I'm Hein from the Taiwan PTS. Speaker, I want, will you invite President Tsai to the Congress to get a speech, or any possible to let the Taiwan president visit Washington, D.C.? Thank you.
I don't have any invitation out there right now. Today we were able to meet her as she transits through America, and I thought that was very productive. Yes, sir.
Hi, Mr. Speaker. Michael Martina from Reuters. President Tsai has just returned from Latin America. Taiwan has been losing allies around the world slowly, including recently Honduras. I'm curious if you think that the United States is doing enough to stop that, if you even think it's the United States' business to step in or say to Taiwan's allies that they should remain with Taiwan.
I think that's one of the reasons the president was out communicating with others. I have a fear of some of these nations changing their positions based upon a hope and dream of financial support for some infrastructure. We have found at times when China has done that, those nations have become in a more economic challenging time, maybe a dam not working in Ecuador, maybe becoming under financial burdens. So I truly believe that all nations should look at where it is and make a decision. I wish all nations would make a decision based upon democracy and freedom and peace. If that's the decision at the end of the day, or the determination, I have no fear of where people would make their decision. Yes, sir.
Mike Flood with AP. I heard what you said about the weapons and also trade, but are there other areas where you think the administration could be acting more aggressively in toughening policy with China? Also, do you think that the country should specifically commit to the defense of Taiwan should China attempt anything militarily?
Look, I know everyone puts these hypotheticals out there. Our goal is that hypothetical never comes to fruition. And what we know through history, the best way to do that is supply the weapons to allow people to deter war. Supply the weapons that people could defend themselves. It is a critical lesson that we learned through Ukraine, that the idea of just sanctions in the future is not going to stop somebody, but deterrent of being able to self-control is going to stop that. Your first part of your question, remind me again what it was?
Yes. Should the administration be doing more in terms of toughening its policy to China beyond what you mentioned, the arms sales and also trade?
Well, the one thing I always believe, you should keep communication going. I think from policymakers here, the more that we're able to speak with one voice, I think the greater understanding China would understand where we stand, but more importantly, it would help them to understand, don't send a balloon over our airspace. Don't use authoritarian bully tactics, is not going to go far. We want to have peace. We want to have economics with you. We want to be able to grow like we had for a number of years together, and we want to continue to foster that. We respect your position. We respect the nature of your country, but the same part is you've got to respect democracy, freedom, and peace. And the idea of America in the last number of years of flip-flopping through administrations, I think had sent the wrong message to China. I remember my first time traveling to China in 1995. I remember going to Tiananmen Square, and there was a sign there, and it had two numbers. The number of days and the number of minutes to Hong Kong came under control. I remember the promises made that China did to Hong Kong, that they could keep their own version of democracy and others, and for 50 years, and they reneged on that. And I think that harmed them around the world. And I think if they understood that, we watched them shut down newspapers and freedom of press that have been there for decades. And I think when the world stays silent on those issues, that's what fosters a problem that gets you to that hypothetical. When you speak with honesty and integrity and you come forth in one voice, and especially the responsibility America has, that makes the world safer. And that's why, if there was a place to meet, it was here today. This isn't a lesson, and I'm proud of the fact that you see Democrats and Republicans. Democrats didn't budge and say, oh, you're going to Ronald Reagan's presidential library, because it wasn't about Republicans. It was the foundation of the idea of America standing for freedom and peace and democracy. It was the idea of those policies that America took during the Cold War and others. That the world is safer based upon what America took those policies on now. And as we look to what the world looks like today, I think this is the right place, the right time, and the right members to be together. Yes, ma'am.
I am Tsai Ing-wen from Taiwan's media. I want to ask a question is about some representative propose to build state-to-state relations between U.S. and Taiwan, or they say U.S. should normalize Taiwan-U.S. relations. What do you think about it?
I don't see any change to our 3 communiques and our 6 assurance today, no. Yes, sir. Yeah. Okay. I think when you look today, just fostering greater relationships, I think when you sit here today, sitting at the Reagan Library with the 6 assurances, that continues to build. And what I look to is, I understand the premise of your question, but our goal here is that we have peace throughout the world. And we understand where the world is today. And I think today helps us foster that further with committing to those 6 assurances of where we go. And I think the world will be safer for it. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Catherine Hiller from the Financial Times. We've heard a lot about unwavering support for Taiwan today. Now, if there were a Chinese attack, do you think the American people would be okay with America sending troops or really stepping in to defend Taiwan? Thank you.
That's a hypothetical question that we never want to get to. The reason why we're together here with both parties sitting down is because we never want to see that question really get asked. We never want to see that to come to fruition. And we understand through history. We understand through the history of what Ronald Reagan would do and others, that day you do not want to have happen. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. And how do you deter that? You foster a greater relationship about peace, freedom, and democracy. You deter the ability for one side to create war. You stick to the 3 communiques and the 6 assurances. That has fostered peace and grown economics on every side of the aisle, be it Taiwan, be it China, be it America. So that is what we're doing today. So when you look back on history, in a critical time around the world, what did your lawmakers do? They stood up. They built relationships to friend and foe. They deterred the ability for one to foster war against the other. They built economic ties with both. And they fostered a greater relationship for freedom and for peace around the world, because no one wants to get to a hypothetical question she just asked. I thank you for spending your time with us today. I thank the members for spending time here. This won't be our last discussion about this, and we'll continue to foster and grow, because it won't all be solved today. But thank you, and God bless. Have a very happy Easter.